He had everything money could buy: mansions, cars, a company worth millions. But when it came to family, his heart was cold. "I never want kids," he told her, his voice sharp, leaving her shattered. She loved him, but she couldn't ignore the truth. With tears in her eyes, she walked away, hiding a secret he never cared to ask about. 3 years passed. He buried himself in work, convincing himself he had no regrets. That was until one unexpected encounter, one that would break his carefully built walls. At a park on a sunny afternoon, his eyes froze on a woman he once loved. She wasn't alone. In her arms were 2 little faces, twins, with eyes that mirrored his own. For the first time, the man who swore he never wanted children felt his world collapse. He hadn't just lost her, he had lost 3 years of their lives. The boardroom windows stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting the glittering skyline of the city. At the head of the polished mahogany table sat Alexander Steele, the young, impossibly successful millionaire CEO. With his tailored suit, sharp jawline, and ice-cold eyes, he commanded the room like a general on the battlefield. People said he was brilliant, ruthless, unstoppable, but also heartless. To him, emotions were a distraction. Love was a weakness, and children. He scoffed at the very idea. "Kids slow you down," he once said during an after-party, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand. "They drain your time, your money, your focus. I'll never be a father. That's not the life I want." Those words, sharp as a blade, cut deeper than he realized. Across the room, his longtime girlfriend Alina froze. She had been with him for almost 3 years, through his struggles, through his rise. She had dreamed of a future together, a home filled with laughter, maybe even children. But that night, his declaration shattered her dreams. When she finally gathered the courage to speak, her voice trembled. "Alex, what if I told you I wanted a family someday?" He looked at her, expression cold. "Then you'd want a life I'll never give you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Elena's heart broke in that instant. She loved him, but she couldn't erase her own desires. And so, without another word, she packed her things and left his penthouse the next morning. What Alexander didn't know was that Alina left carrying more than heartbreak. She left carrying a secret. 3 years later, the world had only grown more obsessed with Alexander Steele. His face was plastered across magazines, financial news, and social media. He was the self-made tycoon, the man who turned his tech startup into a billion-dollar empire. He lived in luxury, but behind the perfection of his public image, he was lonelier than ever. He had dated women since Alina, of course. Beautiful, successful women. But none of them stayed long, and none of them filled the quiet ache he tried to ignore. Every now and then, when he lay awake at night, he thought of her, but pride kept him from reaching out. One sunny afternoon, while his driver dropped him off at Central Park for a rare walk, Alexander's carefully controlled life cracked open. He saw her. She stood near a bench beneath a canopy of trees, her hair catching the light like it always did. She looked older, more mature, but still achingly familiar. His chest tightened at the sight of her, but then his eyes shifted and froze. Beside her stood 2 small children, twins, a boy and a girl, about 3 years old, wearing matching pastel outfits. They clung to Elena's hands, their laughter ringing through the air. And then Alexander's breath caught. The boy looked up, his bright green eyes identical to his own. The little girl turned, her delicate features a mirror of Elena's, but those piercing eyes, his eyes. The world stopped. Alexander's chest constricted, his mind racing. They were his. They had to be. "Alina," he whispered under his breath, his voice shaking for the first time in years. She turned, their eyes met, and in that single look, everything unsaid between them crashed into the open. Regret, anger, pain, and something else, fear. He approached slowly, his usually confident stride faltering. His throat tightened as he finally stopped. In front of her. "It's been a long time," he said, his voice low. Elena held the twins close, her posture guarded. "Yes, 3 years." His eyes darted to the children. "They're yours." His voice cracked slightly. Her jaw tightened. "Ours?" The word struck him like a thunderbolt. For a moment, Alexander couldn't breathe. He looked again at the twins, at the undeniable truth written in their faces. The children he had sworn he never wanted were standing right in front of him. His blood, his legacy, his future. And he hadn't been there for them. "Alina, why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his tone a mix of accusation and desperation. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was steady. Because you made it very clear, Alex, you didn't want kids. I wasn't going to beg you to stay. I chose to raise them on my own. Her words cut deeper than any deal he'd ever lost, deeper than any betrayal he'd faced in business. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. He wasn't the man who had sleepless nights holding them when they cried. He wasn't the one who taught them their first words or wiped their tears. He had missed everything. The twins looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. The boy tilted his head. Mommy, who's that man? Alina swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She wasn't ready for this moment, but it had arrived anyway. She hesitated, then finally said the words that would change everything. That's your father. The boy blinked, his little sister clutching his arm. Our daddy. Alexander felt the ground shift beneath him. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about money, power, or reputation. All he cared about were those two pairs of innocent eyes staring at him like he was a stranger. He knelt down, his expensive suit brushing against the dirt, and whispered, "Yes, I'm your daddy." The little girl tilted her head shyly, then stepped forward. She placed her tiny hand in his, her touch warm and fragile. His vision blurred. The man who once vowed he'd never cry in front of anyone felt hot tears stream down his face. Elena's chest ached as she watched. She had survived 3 years without him, convinced she didn't need him. But in that moment, as she saw his walls crumble, she realized something terrifying. He wanted to be part of their lives now, and she wasn't sure if she could let him. The next few minutes felt like hours. Alexander, kneeling in front of his children, struggled to steady his breath. He had faced hostile boardrooms, cutthroat competitors, and billion-dollar losses, but nothing compared to the weight of those tiny hands gripping his. Elena's heart wavered. She had sworn to protect her children from him, from the cold man who once dismissed the idea of their existence before they were even conceived. Yet now, she couldn't deny what she saw. The tears in his eyes were real. Alexander, you can't just walk in after 3 years and expect everything to change, Alina said firmly, though her voice cracked. He looked up at her, desperation raw in his gaze. You're right, I was a fool. I said things I didn't mean. Things I thought I believed. But seeing them seeing you, Alina, I can't walk away now. Please, give me a chance. Her chest tightened. Memories of nights crying alone, the fear of not knowing if she could raise twins by herself, the endless exhaustion, all of it rushed back. Where was he then? The twins, oblivious to the storm between their parents, giggled as they played with Alexander's tie. The boy tugged it, laughing, while his sister tried to copy him. For a moment, the image looked almost normal, almost like a family. But Alina couldn't forget the past. Do you have any idea what it's been like? She snapped quietly, her eyes burning. I've worked 2 jobs, juggled daycare, paid hospital bills while you sat in your glass towers giving speeches about your empire. You don't get to swoop in now because you suddenly feel something. Alexander flinched. He wasn't used to being spoken to that way. Bit from her. It hurt in ways nothing else ever had. I know, he admitted, his voice heavy. I know I failed you. I failed them before I even met them, but Alina, I can't change the past. I can only change what I do from here on. She crossed her arms, trying to steel herself, but her resolve was slipping. She had dreamed of him being here once, and now that he was, her heart didn't know how to react. The little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mommy, can Daddy come home with us? Alina froze. Alexander's breath caught. Her eyes flicked between her daughter's innocent face and Alexander's pleading one. She couldn't answer, not yet. That night, Alexander couldn't shake the encounter. He returned to his penthouse, a space filled with modern art and expensive furniture but empty of warmth. For the first time in years, he hated it. He sat on the edge of his bed, his mind spinning. He remembered his vow, I'll never be a father. And yet, the memory of his daughter's tiny hand in his own haunted him. The way his son's eyes, his exact eyes, looked at him with curiosity. He couldn't lose them. The next morning, Alexander made a decision. At sunrise, he arrived at the small apartment where Alina lived. He stood outside the door, holding a bag of groceries in one hand and a stuffed bear in the other. When she opened the door, her jaw nearly dropped. Alex, what are you doing here? I know I can't erase 3 years, he said quickly, but I can show you I'm serious. I don't want to just write checks, Alina. I want to be here. For you, for them, for everything. She looked at the groceries, then at him. Suspicion lingered in her eyes. This isn't a business deal, you can negotiate. I know, he replied softly. But let me try. Not for me, for them. The twins appeared behind her, squealing when they saw him. Daddy, they cried in unison, racing to hug his legs. Elena's heart twisted. She couldn't deny the joy on their faces. They deserved to know their father, but could she trust him not to break their hearts? Over the next weeks, Alexander tried. He learned how to braid his daughter's hair clumsily, but with effort. He helped his son build Lego towers, laughing when they collapsed. He even took them to the park, where instead of hiding behind his phone, he chased them until he was breathless. Slowly, Elena saw glimpses of a man she never thought existed, a man who wasn't the cold CEO, but someone willing to kneel in the dirt for his kids. Someone willing to cook badly just to make them smile. One night, as she tucked the twins into bed, Elena overheard Alexander whispering to them. "I used to think being powerful meant never needing anyone," he said quietly. "But then I met you too. Now I know. Being powerful means never letting you down." Elena pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, he could be the father her children deserved. But trusting him meant risking her heart again, and that terrified her. A month later, Alexander stood in front of her apartment with something in his hand, a small velvet box. When Elena opened the door, she saw fear in his eyes, a fear she had never witnessed before. "Elena," he began, his voice trembling, "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve your love, after what I said, after what I did. But I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you and our children that I can be better. Not Alexander Steele, the CEO, just Alex, a man who loves you." He opened the box. Inside was not a diamond ring, but two smaller rings, tiny ones. "For the twins? I don't just want to marry you," he said. "I want to marry this family. All four of us, please. Give me another chance." Elena's hands shook as tears blurred her vision. She saw the sincerity in his eyes. The man she once loved, and the father her children already adored. And in that moment, her walls finally broke. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes, Alex. But don't you dare let us down again." The twins squealed with joy, clapping their hands. Alexander slipped the little rings onto their tiny fingers, then pulled Elena into his arms. For the first time in years, he wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was a father, a husband to be. A man who finally understood that love, not power, was the greatest wealth of all. Love has a way of rewriting even the coldest stories. Alexander thought success meant standing alone, building walls so high no one could ever climb them. But fate had other plans, to little plans with wide eyes and innocent hearts. In the end, it wasn't wealth, power, or pride that defined him. It was the choice to open his heart, to fight for family, and to cherish the woman he once pushed away. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. No matter how far we run, love will always catch up, sometimes in the form of a second chance, sometimes in the laughter of children, and sometimes in the arms of the person you were meant to find again. Would you have forgiven Alexander? Or walked away forever? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to share this story with someone who still believes in second chances.